it's not just you being able to build something. It's you building the right thing for the right reason for the right folks, and there's a market for it, right? It's not You're not just building a solution to find a problem. You find a problem first, and then prove a solution. And even if you create a solution, you sometimes it might not be the right one, right? It's like trying to find the problem solution fit.
Welcome to the Tap In with Tako podcast. I'm Takato, and my goal here is to help you transition from the military to your civilian career or business. Today, I bring on Nicu, a senior platform product manager. I often hear the question, how do I get into product management? If you have that same question, Nicu talks about his journey from an E4 in the Army to his current role as a senior product manager. We talk about the 5 paths to product, how to acquire the necessary skills to break into product management, how his Filipino culture has helped him in his career, and so much more. If you're interested in product management after the military, or just want to enjoy some laughs about karaoke, this episode is for you.
In the Subaru with my Nikes on the dash. In the Subaru with my Nikes on the dash. In the Subaru with my Nikes on the dash. Nikes on the dash, Nikes on the dash.
Cool. All right. Well, happy Sunday, Nicu. Welcome to the Tap In with Tako podcast. Super excited to have you here. We're gonna dive into some product management stuff and just some other things, but really excited to have you here. I'll just have you quickly start with a quick intro of yourself, and then we'll dive into our topics.
Awesome. Thanks, Tako. Really happy to be here. So, Nicu, I was born and raised in the Philippines. Came to the U.S. when I was a kid. I joined the military in 2011. I joined active duty as an infantryman. I got stationed in JBLM. We did a deployment in 2012 to 2013. Got out of active duty in 2014. Transitioned into the National Guard. Throughout my transition, I joined the Microsoft Software Systems Academy, where I learned how to code a little bit, and led my first role in tech through Expedia. And starting off in operations as an operations analyst, then as a software engineer, then transitioned into Microsoft as a site reliability engineer, or in the site reliability engineer org. And after that, spent a year there. I transitioned into product management, initially in Azure, and then going into Windows, where I worked on notifications. And currently, I'm senior product manager at Salesforce, specifically within MuleSoft, where we do a lot of app integration. And I've been there since April of last year. So
Cool. That's awesome. Thanks for the intro. You've had quite a journey from the time you started to the time you are now. But I really want to start with a lot of the audience are transitioning veterans, are transitioning service members and spouses. And so we were talking a little bit before today, and you were telling me about your first role in your operations analyst role. Can you talk us through what was that first day like for you after you received your first job and all that?
Yeah, I mean, it was yeah, it's actually pretty interesting for me, at least because it was an operations role. I just remember when I was coming out of the military, right? I was an infantryman. Most of the things that we usually end up doing coming out is either be a cop or work as a janitor somewhere, right? Because that's some of our more transferable skills, right? Um, but as I joined in operations, I remember my first day. Just got done with orientation, got into our floor, and I just heard things. I just come into everybody has their speakerphones out, and or they're on a conference call, just having on a sounds like an incident at that time, where it's like, Expedia is not taking any bookings. Okay, something's broken. To me, I was like, I was pretty lost because I was fairly new. It's my first day. I didn't really know what to look at, and I was really just listening at that time. I don't think I had any expectation to really contribute on anything, but I came to realization that some of the things that they were calling out were pretty familiar to me. I think just on just a different lens, right? So, for example, when they were on the call, it kind of reminded me when I walked into it, it reminded me of a talk, right, where everybody's just trying to figure out what's going on and just getting feedback, or just getting information from boots on ground. Like, hey, what are you seeing? What's going on here? Just getting updates and trying some different things out. So that kind of settled me down on my first day in operations. I was like, oh, although I don't know what they're really looking at, the familiarity of it, right? Of the chaos of like, what is going on here? What do you see? Kind of was like, oh yeah, I remember this. Is like react to contact. This is like battle drill. This is a battle drill for me. It's like, okay, it's a 3D. It's like a distance description and description, right? Distance direction description. So I think to me that kind of leveled me out. And I was like, okay, I can work with this. So that just reminded me on my very first day and how interesting it was. So yeah, a lot of
That's an awesome
parallels.
story. Yeah. And so like as you progressed within your operations analyst role, like you're talking about there's things that you picked up on like
Yeah.
being in the military. Like what are some other things that you saw being an operations analyst that you're like, "Oh, this kind of like reminds me of other things in the military."
Yeah, I think the communication piece was pretty big. I know in the military we do have a lot of triaging and prioritization, right? Like when you get into contact, what do you do? And also like if there's always something going on, and you have to prioritize things. Like which one is the most important thing that is time sensitive, that's going to have biggest impact, right? And I think that's an overlap that I saw. Even though I transitioned out as lower enlisted, right? I was an E4. So I wasn't really in a full on leadership position at the time, but just picking up on those things, kind of helped me in my roles in operations, to be honest. In fact, I think a lot of the enlisted folks coming out would do pretty well on anything that's operations related as their first job, just because like in the enlisted side, we're very focused on operations and execution, right? And on the execution side of things, like okay, getting things done on the
Mhm.
timeline, a lot of moving parts, which is why I see a lot of at least on the senior enlisted side or the NCO side, right? You get into their they have their PMP, and just go from that track. So yeah, I think the communication and triaging has been things that I picked up pretty from the military, and I used heavily within my operations role, because at the end of the day, that's what you're kind of doing here. So
Yeah, that's interesting you mentioned that, and I want to go back to what you were saying earlier. You joined the Microsoft certification or academy, right? And that
yeah,
helped you transition into your role. And so, like, I was in a similar situation. I found an opportunity through Accenture for lower enlisted people as well. I was in E5 when I got out. Can you talk to us a little bit about like what that experience was like and what the certification process was for that?
yeah. So the program is called the Microsoft Software and Systems Academy. When I joined back in 2014, we were like the second overall cohort. It's like a boot camp style kind of program, with anything that's fairly new, like things were still getting fleshed out. Um, but the program itself just teaches you some coding, basic data structures and algorithms. We At that time when I went through, we learned C# and some JavaScript, CSS, and HTML, pretty basic. And at the end of the program, we were able to create Windows applications. So at that time, it was a universal Universal Windows platform application, so UWP. I should know this because I worked on Windows, but anyway, yeah, we ended up with a UWP app, and yeah, it kind of just simulated a boot camp, to be honest, a coding boot camp where they just teach you things and progressively, improve on it. There's not really certification coming out of it.
Hmm.
You can if you wanted to. I know I took my certification within Microsoft for software testing. Um, I got it. I mean, that was about it. But there's nothing really that's other certifications to get through that. It's just more of a training program, really, to help you do coding. So, yeah.
Does that guarantee you a spot in, or how does that help you like find your first role out?
Yeah. So good question. At that time when I went through it, it wasn't a guaranteed job, right? They
Mhm.
give you training. And at that time we were able to interview with Microsoft. And first time I interviewed with Microsoft, because I didn't get through. I had like a couple of goes and no goes, because it was like uh, the teams that I was interviewing were pretty spread out. So it wasn't just software engineering positions that I was applying to. I think two of my interviewers were from the NOC, which is Network Operations Command. It's more on troubleshooting, and we didn't really do um, software engineering questions, right? Like data structures and algorithms. Like the person I was talking to is more on scripting and didn't really talk about any of those things. Um, Yeah, so they didn't guarantee a job. And so, yeah, long story short, they didn't guarantee a job, but they did have an interview for us at that time. But I think right now it kind of changed since we went
Mhm.
through. But I think it's still a pretty good training. It's a good way to start, and you can start taking it while you're still in active duty, actually. So, um, which made me happy because I was ETSing, right? And I was like, I don't have to go to PT. I have to just go to this class,
There you go.
which is awesome. So,
Yeah, if you don't have to
yeah.
get up at super early in the morning to get to go to
Yeah.
PT.
Yeah, dude.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So moving along. So like, yeah, so you got into operations and you eventually made your way to product manager. And I want to touch on this too, because there's a lot of people that reach out to me, and I'm sure there's a lot of people who reach out to you is like, I want to get into product. How do I get into product? Can you talk about like what, and I think it's important also, like the skills that you acquire before you get into product are super, super important before you are actually a product manager. Can you
Yeah.
touch on like 2 or 3 skills that have really helped you in your previous roles really excel in your current product manager role?
Yeah. I guess I can clarify too on like where I'm at in product, right? So I'm
Mhm.
a platform product manager, so heavily technical in terms of things. My main customers are more developer type of customers, internal and external, right? So I guess let me take a step back. So I started off in operations, got into software engineering. At that time, I actually didn't even know about product management. If I'm being honest, like my entire goal was like I'm going to be a software engineer. So I focused heavily on that. Did my transition to software engineering, built up my skills there, and then when I got into Azure as part of SRE there, I worked on a couple of a product at that time. I was working on a feature and we shipped it. And I was like, okay, great. I worked on this for like 3 months. Great. And it didn't really get as much adoption as I thought it would. I was like, man, I worked on like this for like the past couple of months. Like, what happened? And then I ended up, talking to like, why did we do this, right? And trying to go into the questions like, why did we do this? Why was this a design, or why did we think this was a good feature. So that's where I got really exposed to product management, to where I talked to the product manager about it and why this is the vision of it. And I think that a light bulb kind of clicked there for me. It was like, hey, it's not just you being able to build something, it's you building the right thing for the right reason for the right folks, and there's a market for it, right? It's not, you're not just building a solution to find a problem. You find a problem first and then prove a solution. And even if you create a solution, you sometimes it might not be the right one, right? It's like trying to find the problem solution fit. um so yeah, that's how I kind of find product management. So I found it very organically within my career. And from there, what helped me in my transition in more technical product management or platform product management was the experience on software engineering, right? I I know that the customers that I'm going to be serving, which is developers, and like what some of their pain points are, and really when I worked as an SRE, I really had to think about scale very often, right? Because my job at Azure at that time was on the capacity and build out, so the actual infrastructure that runs things, right? So those skills kind of helped me out just because I targeted platform product management. I want to remain in the technical space. I think being able to write things on a clear manner has been pretty helpful. Because at the end of the day, your main job really is to get clarity and direction. And if you're able to write those things down, either through a PRD or a one pager and communicate it out, it's pretty good. I think also a skill of building relationships. Um, so building really trust towards other teams, because you as a product manager, you're not going to be the you are responsible for like the success of the product, but the making it happen goes across multiple different teams and orgs, right? You work with not just your software engineering team, but maybe your design team and also your support, legal, marketing folks. It's an entire team that you're trying to wrangle in, right? And you're just trying to like, okay, let's push this forward. Like let's get this going. So I think being able to build those relationships is, I guess, another skill that really helps out as a product manager. Um,
Yeah, let's touch on that last point that you just
yeah,
mentioned. So building relationships with other people, and I feel like as a lower enlisted person, right? In product management, you're not in charge of anybody, but you have to influence by leading other people, right? And in lower enlist as a lower enlisted person, as an E4, you have all these buddies, right? E4 mafia, like, and you need to get some tasks done, and not
Yeah.
everybody wants to do those tasks.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's really similar in that nature. But what have you seen? Like, what experience have you taken from the military to really help you build those relationships, like in product management, or like being able to get buy-in from like the legal team or the marketing team or the other teams that you need to push things along?
Yeah, so that's a really good reframe actually on the E4 Mafia. Shout out to them. Out to us, I guess. uh, I would say that really it comes down to one, building a relationship over time. You don't build a relationship overnight, right? You start touching those. You start talking to these folks a lot pretty early, so you really establish trust. Even you don't just go to them to ask them to do things, right? Like you have to. It's a give and take relationship, and also just understanding where they're coming from and empathizing with them. One thing that I have found was just helpful was that what does that you know let's just say you're trying to introduce a feature or product or whatever, right? And you're trying to convince your support team to support to really go with this, right? You have to show them like, okay, this is why it'll help you. Like, hey, we're introducing this new feature so you can reduce the amount of support tickets you get because of this issue that always happens, right? It's improving the customer pain point and it makes your life easier. I found that those kind of approach and to where really trying to look at it at their lenses and how it kind of benefits them has been the biggest way to get buy-in from folks. I mean, I guess, and going back to the E4 example, right? Like, hey, if we do this, then maybe we can, sham out earlier, right? Like, I'll sham out with you on another thing, right? And you kind
Yeah.
of give them the benefits. Okay, this is why we should do this, right? Um, yeah, and I think that's pretty helpful. And another one would be really if you don't go with the relationship route, really just with data. To be honest, I think coming in like, hey, you have these numbers that you look at. It's like, hey, this is why we should be driving this. And those numbers should be tailored towards that domain that you're talking to. Like, I don't think you talking to business folks talking about your bugs and your error rates, they will care about as much. But if you start talking about like, hey, this can be the additional revenue that we can build or generate, right? If we introduce these new things, it's pretty helpful. So just knowing the right data and the right audience to present these things to. So
Oh, I like that last one. The right data in the audience. Can you talk about like how you learn those like data skills? Because sometimes it's like, well, there's so much data out there, right?
yeah.
And it's like, how do you find the right stuff and tailor the audience and give them the information that they need?
Yeah, to be honest with you, like I think my first role in operations actually helped me out on this heavily because one of the things that I had to do was create alerts and dashboards. So I had to work with data on on a daily basis, really, and trying to convince. I was on the other side, right? I was on the operations side, trying to convince product managers and the product team, like, hey, there's something broken, please fix it, and here's the data that
Mhm.
shows it. So I think I found the value of data pretty early. So that maybe it just worked out for me that well, right? Like, okay, I just realized like it is very helpful to convincing other folks. Um, Aside from acquiring those skills, I mean, I just take up courses online or any kind of YouTube videos to learn that thing. If it's with SQL or the ones that we were using at that time was with Splunk and so writing Splunk queries and also uh, Grafana dashboards. So just knowing the query language that's used and just identifying really the tool, right? So the thing is like you need to understand data analysis and data presentation, right? And storytelling with data. There's actually a good book. It's called Data Storytelling with Data. I read a few pages on it or a few chapters on it. It's pretty good, and really, that's where I got the portion like, okay, the right the right data for the right audience kind
Mhm.
of came out, right? Um, yeah, I mean, I think if you it kind of depends on which company you're in. But I think the you won't go wrong with learning SQL and just being able, even just using Excel. To be honest, like you can have a
Mhm.
CSV file imported in, and you just extract out the data, and being able to get some insights from there has been super helpful. So, and I use that,
Right.
to this day. Anytime I try to convince anybody, like, here's the data and why we should do this, right?
Right.
So yeah.
So you mentioned SQL. Are there any other, I guess, like technical or tactical kind of skills that you think people would need to excel at product management?
Um,
Specifically, like in your role, if they want to go like platform, is like what kind of technical skills would they need?
Yeah. So on platform product management, I guess it depends on the platform that you're building on. So if you're going to be on a web cloud service kind of type of platform, then obviously just understanding the cloud would be pretty important. Yeah, get to know the difference between IaaS, PaaS, SaaS, right, and like understanding the impact of for example, to me, like we expose APIs. Like, okay, what does if we expose this API? What does this mean, right? Like, would this does this expose us also to additional security, like security issues? Like, what can this scale? What happens if they hit us like a billion times? Or I shouldn't say a billion, because that's a hard hard number to scale to, but a
It's a lot.
million times per second, right? Like, or even a million, like thousands of times per second. Like, how can we ensure that that's actually pretty helpful? And that's where the technical knowledge really comes into play. I was like, okay, can you have some basic understanding on how a cloud application is is shipped, or how an application is really shipped, and how would a developer use it, right? Or a developer consumer, because that's basically the personas that you're really giving the product to. So you have to just be aware of that. So um, I just had a recent post about this too. It's like, hey, do product managers need to learn how to code? It's like, no, unless you're working on developer specific products, because you have to be able to use the product, right?
Mhm.
It's you have to, if you can't use the product, then you won't have the full understanding of how what your customers are, what pain points they're feeling, right? Like, okay, is it the generation of the tokens? Like, is it creating credentials? Is it the API usage itself doesn't make sense? You need to be able to understand that, even if, especially in the product, actually not, especially in any product, right? Like, regardless if it's a technical product that's developer focused, it could, that's the same principle applies to if you have a mobile smartphone, a smartphone application. Like, you have some kind of if you have to use it to understand the pain points that your customers have. So
Over the years, so you mentioned a lot of these different concepts just now. Did you learn these like on the job, or did you have to figure out outside of the job? Like, how did you acquire all these things?
yeah, I think to be honest, I think it organically showed up to me. Right now, though, these resources have been coming up a lot more. I think for the past 3 years, 3.5 years, there's a lot more content on product management, which is great.
Mhm.
It helps
Right.
you get the differences, just the general understanding of it. Uh, I had to learn these things while on the job, and just really coming to that realization, like, oh, I really need to understand this in order to build something up, right? Um, so to answer your question, I kind of just figured them out while I was on the job,
Mhm.
and right now, though, I've been seeing that one of the reasons why I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, at least even as a consumer, is that a lot of product managers have been sharing their insights on things, which is pretty awesome. I wish I had that like 4 years ago. Right,
Yep,
somebody told me
for
tell me
sure.
those things, like how to craft vision. I was like, how do you create strategy that ties into this
Mhm.
thing, or it's the different tactics that product management folks really need to know. So yeah.
Yeah, one of the most popular podcasts that I've really been tuning into is Lenny's podcast. I don't know if you heard about
Yeah.
that. This podcast, but lots of gems in there. So shout out to
Yeah.
Lenny.
Yeah, for sure, dude. Um,
So shifting gears here a little bit, we've been talking a lot about product management,
mhm.
and I mentioned earlier a lot of people are curious. You made a post recently on LinkedIn, and for those that don't follow Nico yet, go follow him.
Thanks.
Can you talk about like what are the 5 paths to product? Can you elaborate on that? You mentioned that in one of your posts.
Yeah. So I got asked a lot. I mean, pretty sure you as well as a product man, you get asked this a lot of times. Like, how can I get my first product management job? And product management is one of those tech roles that has this catch 22 where you're like, hey, you need product experience to be a product manager, but I can't get my product experience because I'm not a product manager. um so it's kind of tricky. So plus the I think there's a lot less product management positions available, especially in a junior role. um for people to apply to. So I kind of guess reflected back on like these different paths that I realized that could be potential starting points for product managers to get their first product role. Right, the first one is really joining an APM program, so Associate Product Management program. This is like from big companies, or actually shouldn't say big companies, tech companies that they do right to really grab college graduates to get into product management positions like immediately, right? Another way is apprenticeships. There's a couple of apprenticeship programs again by tech companies to get the more non-traditional path, like those that don't have college degrees. Because just a quick sidebar, right? Like product management is one of the positions where you can start from almost any, really any background and get to it,
Hmm.
right? Um, which is so vague, which also doesn't help you
Right.
have like this path to just follow. Like, hey, you can start anywhere. But it's like, okay, where's anywhere? Like, how does that even
Right.
make can give me like some guardrails here? So apprenticeships, right? Third one is really creating your business or own product. So nobody's gonna hire you, then you make your own experience. So that's one of the things that I ended up doing. Fourth one is like an internal transfer. So if you're in a product adjacent role, again, something I did was I was doing stuff adjacent to product management with software engineering. So we worked pretty closely. Um, uh that's how that's how I transitioned into product. And then last option is really just the spray and pray, which a lot of folks do, is I'm going to apply to like 300 job applications for product management roles, right? So those are like the 5 paths to product really on the first to get your first product role. You can take any of those 5 strategies or even combine multiple ones of them to get things done.
Yeah, that's some gems right there. Because yeah, it answers the question of like, how do you get in? Well, you kind of got to figure out a way. There's multiple ways, but here are some of the five. So that's there's
Yeah.
some good tips.
Yeah, for sure.
And so we talked a lot about product, and like how you got into product. You mentioned some of the ways that you've learned like some of your technical skills, but kind of shifting back to veterans or
Mhm.
spouses that are looking to get into just general into tech. Are there any resources that you recommend that have helped you or that you would recommend veterans or spouses to take advantage of?
Yeah, for sure. So I guess just for me, right? So I personally use a couple of veteran resources. Obviously, the MSSA program, I went through that. Um, use Veterati to build relationships and just ask mentors and also just mentor back on folks. Um, there's other programs out there, like for example 50 Strong is a pretty solid one. They have different fellowships. There's also Vets in Tech has a lot of great resources out there. I think you had Catherine in one of your podcasts
Mhm. Yep.
on an earlier podcast before that. So I ended up compiling a couple of them because again, this is another one that I get asked so many times. I was like, hey Niku, like what can I trying to transition into tech? I'm a vet or a military spouse. What resources can I found? There's like 60 resources that I found. Here you go, right? Like you can just use anyone there, like either through a fellowship or different programs out there. Like for example, Salesforce, if you want to get into that kind of stack. There's VetForce. There's Vets Who Code. There's other programs that are specific for veterans in getting into coding. And really, before that, though, like I would say that one, really figure out your motivation and why you want to get into tech, and then two, narrow down what kind of role that you're seeking in tech. And this is where you start really talking to different folks that are in the industry, just getting an understanding of the different roles. Like what does a customer success manager do, right? If that's the thing you want to do. How about a cloud engineer? What those folks do, right? Like what does a software engineer do, or product manager do? So there's those different kind of programs. Another one that I would say, if you're an active duty veteran right now, or even in the guard, um, no, I shouldn't say active duty veteran because that doesn't make sense. If you're active duty military or in the guard, right? Check out the free resources that you get. I just found out, like on my last year in the guard too, which kind of made me kind of butthurt, is that you get free Udemy, right? Free Udemy courses I've been paying for, which I'm kind of like, again, I was like, damn it, I should have known about this sooner instead of paying paying for these courses.
Right.
You get Udemy for free, right? And you get O'Reilly Media, Learning Media, which is probably one of the top resources to get to get for just for technical stuff. Like if you really want to grow in that area, they have such great content. I know at Microsoft at that time we got it for free, and that's something that I refer to a lot. I mean, I have a couple of O'Reilly books right over there, just to help me out for things, right? So I would check those things out, and there's if you don't want to just look at, because there's different categories, right? There's veteran specific tech resources, and there's like, hey, you're just transitioning into tech resources. And one good thing about you being a vet is like you're a superset of those two things,
Mhm.
right? And you can take advantage of all those things. Vet Tech's another one to check out. Npower has another one that's for veteran specific. Splunk, Syracuse University also has one. Yeah, there's a lot of different programs, and I know Amazon has this a specific apprenticeship programs for veterans. So I would definitely check them out.
For sure. And you have a LinkedIn post that talks about all those resources, right?
I actually created my so what in my site I created an Airtable to just
Okay.
categorize those things, and folks can use it. Like I have it categorized. Let me open it up real quick. Uh,
Yeah.
it's
We'll link that
categorized
for
to
sure.
yeah to where it's like it's career transition programs, apprenticeships, communities, and free self study resources. So yeah.
Boom. Okay. Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. You go visit Nicu's website. Check out all those resources for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, it's not even. I'm not even putting it on a paywall or anything. It's literally for you to consume. Just one, you're like, man, I'm getting asked this question like one too many times, and
Yep.
I was like, I gotta automate this somehow and just point people there. So
Right. 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 There's your
yeah,
product management brain at work. How do we automate this part?
yeah, for sure. Like it's a common problem. It's a common pain point. Let's solve
Right.
this somehow, right?
Yep. Yep. For sure. For sure. One thing that you mentioned, right, is like figuring out what you want to do after the military. And you're talking about like customer success or cloud engineer. What are ways that people you found, like, how did you figure out what you wanted to do after the military? Like, did you reach out to people on LinkedIn, or did you like go to the coffee shop? Like, how did you figure that out?
Yeah, I know for me, coming out of the military, I always knew I wanted to be in tech. I think before I joined the military, actually, I was going to an IT program. I was like 9 months in. It was just teaching us basic CompTIA A plus and Network Plus stuff. So I always had an interest in tech. Um, but like I said, like my initial goal when coming out of the military was like I want to be a software engineer. So that's what I focused on, and I think over time I just picked up a couple of different insights in things I want to do, and then just followed my curiosity from there. It's like so when I reached my first software engineering role, I was like, oh man, this is great, this is awesome, but I actually want to be a site reliability engineer now. So from there,
Mhm.
I focused into SRE, right? I was like, okay, like, how can I get into an SRE role? And at that time, SRE wasn't even really a thing. Even at Microsoft, it wasn't even an actual role yet, right? It wasn't an actual job title industry wide. Um, so just got into that, and then yeah, just kind of followed by curiosity, to be honest. And I was like, oh, this is something cool. I want to do that. Same
Yep.
with product management, right? I was like, I found it organically. It's like, oh, that sounds cool. I want to do that, and yeah, just following whatever path it leads me, right?
Absolutely. Be curious for sure. For sure.
Yeah, and I think I think just to answer your question too, like
Hmm.
I think that's why it's really important to I guess join different events as well,
Hmm.
to just get exposure of those job titles, and you just get to ask like, what do you
Right.
actually do, right? A question that's still hard for me to answer to my mom, like when she asked me like, what do you do as a product manager? I was like, I
Right.
manage the product. And it's like, how many people do you manage? I'm like, I don't manage anybody actually. So she would ask me like, okay, what do you actually, when do you do stuff? I'm like, other people do it. Like, so my mom was like, what do you actually do? I was like, yeah,
Right.
that's a
Right.
good
Right.
question, mom. So anyway, sorry for the sidebar there.
No. No. That's
It's
some
one
good
of those
insight.
things.
No, I'm sure people are curious too that are outside of product. Like, oh, what do you actually do as a product manager? So it's funny the insight that you're sharing there. Speaking of which, your mom. So
Yeah.
your Filipino background. You are Filipino.
Yeah.
You were born in the Philippines. You mentioned earlier today, and I definitely want to touch on this. Can you talk to us about how your Filipino background has helped you, kind of in your career in general, or just how has helped you? Yeah, I guess in general.
Yeah, I mean, I would say my karaoke skills would have helped me build relationships, but we haven't done that at work as much. But I think it's really just you know in my culture, I guess I in my immediate family, it's always been like having fun, right, and just having
Hmm.
humor. And that to me has been a way to build rapport with other folks. Just being able to be a person that other people want to work with, right? It's like
Hmm.
you I've met some folks that are really smart, but are very like not good folks to hang out with, um, or be in the trenches with, right? Like that's the way I
Hmm.
convert out those things. And it's fine, and that's totally fine if that's what they do. But that to me, just being able to, I guess, have an easier. It's not an easier time. It's a way for me to build relationships, right? Like either through just having fun or some humor to break the ice. Has helped me out heavily, and no, I credit my I guess Filipino culture and just upbringing in general, and then just having fun and laughing. Maybe some karaoke too. So we'll see. Maybe I'll incorporate that one of these days. So
Yeah, do it. Include it in one of your posts, and how to
yeah,
karaoke as a product manager
yeah,
101.
for sure. So
Awesome, awesome. Any last tips or advice you want to share with the audience?
yeah, I would say if you are interested in tech in general, like things that I've been telling folks, if it was a framework, right? Figuring out your why, figuring out what, narrowing down the discipline that you want to get to. So if you want to do software engineering, product, program, design, whatever it is, figure it out. Third one is get the skills that you need, skills and experience. So either you go to college, go to a boot camp, go to an apprenticeship. Um, Figure it out like which path is the best suited for you on your situation, and only you could understand what that situation is, right, or what situation you're in. Fourth one, find a community, find a community and mentor. I think you being in the military community probably have one of the you know biggest networks available to you right off the bat. There's almost of veterati. That's why I really plug veterati on this, is because they have so many veterans out there on different industries. Like even if you don't, even if you're not interested in just tech, you want to learn more about construction, fin or finance and all that stuff. There's somebody there to talk to you about that. Um, so find a community, find a mentor. That usually helps. And then fifth one would really be active to in LinkedIn or somewhere to find people or find your name. I think it's even if you get all the skills you want, there's always this challenge of people not finding a job because nobody can just find you,
Hmm.
right? So that's why I think if you, especially in this day and age, you should have like some kind of online presence or personal brand, whatever you want to call it, so that folks can find you and kind of hire you. So that's, to be honest, that's one thing that I'm working on myself right now. Like that's why I started like last month. I was like, you know what, I've been telling people to to do this personal branding and
Hmm.
posting in public and building in public and stuff, and I haven't really done it as much. So I should do this so I can actually talk to folks about this a bit more. And I shared one of my learnings from it. Like after a month, like this is the this is the impressions you got on your post. This is the engagement. This is the profile views, and each one of those things are basically it's a funnel, right? Like if you think about it, like
Hmm.
your goal is to find folks to click on your LinkedIn profile, and then from there, okay, you know those 34,000 impressions, maybe 1% of them are recruiters, right? Or if hiring
Hmm.
managers, they could have an opportunity for you, and they wouldn't have known about you if you didn't post anything or if you didn't create content, right? So it's similar to product management. It's your go to market strategy, right? Like, okay, you create a great product, it's awesome, it's awesome, but if nobody can knows about it, there's there's really no point, right? So that's the way I think of things. But yeah, that's like the five ones that I usually recommend folks if you are really thinking about tech. That's the framework that I would use.
That's some awesome final thoughts there. If people have questions or they want to reach out, or they just want to follow you for your awesome content, where can they find you?
Yeah, so I am fairly active on LinkedIn right now, and also Twitter. I might be creating content in YouTube here fairly soon. I just because I also like just talking, and doing on videos and stuff. Um, Best place to if you're a vet, I am on Veterati as well. So if you want to book some time for me there, feel free. You just have my calendar updated there anyway. So LinkedIn, Twitter, Veterati, and yeah, that's the best places for to reach me. So
Cool. I'll make sure I link all that in the show notes. But yeah, we'll close this out. Nicu, thank you so much for all the awesome insight. There's a ton of content. So I hope everyone enjoys listening. Thanks again for
yeah,
being on, man.
no, thank you, appreciate it, brother.
Thank you so much for listening. If you found this valuable, you can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and now YouTube. Also, please consider leaving a review and let me know what you think. All the links we talked about will be on the show notes, or you can go to tapinwithtako.buzzsprout.com. Talk to y'all next time. Peace.